all have family photos, some more recent and some from long ago. So in this video, I'm going to talk to you about preserving and recording those family photos and other artifacts you might have as part of your family history. And I'm going to show you a service I use that was able to take a photo that looked like this, and I was able to turn it into something that looked like this. So let's get started. So I was actually just taking this picture of my grandmother. Usually sits right back here. And I was taking and scanning it. So I got this picture and a lot of other family photos and artifacts 2 years ago. Shortly before my grandmother turned 98, she wound up having to get put in a nursing home. And I went to her house with my mother to clean out her basement. So I had this picture. I'd been really careful. I hadn't really ever wanted to take it out because it was sort of stuck to the frame, and I didn't want to cause any damage to it. But I needed a good scan for an upcoming video that I'll be doing, where I'll be talking a little bit about her at this age. This is a beautiful picture. It's a fairly good copy. This is actually the original, and it's in the original frame. Interesting enough, I found this under here, under this picture, is a little baby girl. And it says 1942. So I have no idea who this is, if it's a person that's part of my family, or if it was just from the photographer. This was the sample picture they had in the frame. So that's a mystery for another time. I don't have any relatives that would fit the age frame and the time frame for that picture. So I'm going to just put this back in the frame, and I'm going to then give you a quick tour of some of the photos and artifacts and things I have behind me, because I've had people ask about them in the past. But then I'm going to show you, I'm going to talk a little bit more about that collection of photos and things I got from my grandmother's, how one of them helped solve a brick wall that I was dealing with for years. I'm going to talk to you about how I record and organize my photos, and then I'm going to show you that great service I was telling you about at the top of the video. Let's go for the tour. Feel free to skip this brief tour and jump to the next part of the video while I start talking about organizing your photos. So I'm going to start on the upper left. You're going to see a picture of Myra Gut from 1925. Now this is a place that's very familiar to me because I spent many a summer there in my childhood, as my family, on my mom's side of the family, had a bungalow on the Gut. Next to it is a shelf that has two icons from my family in Cape Breton. It has St. Paul's Presbyterian Church, where my grandparents worshipped, and Great Glace Bay General Hospital that was built by the Orangemen in 1914. My grandmother worked there for the majority of her adult life. In behind the church, you'll see a small book. It's a hymnal from the Presbyterian Church of Canada from the 1920s. Next to that is a shelf that has an action figure of Sir John A. Macdonald, Canada's first Prime Minister. I did a video on that previously, and up on that shelf with him is a Webster's Dictionary of Pronunciation. This was from my grandmother had from her secretarial school. And if we move over to the right, on that shelf there is things from my father's side of the family. There is a picture of my great-great-grandmother and my great-grandfather. Next to them is another action figure of Canadian Prime Minister Sir Wilfrid Laurier, who was Canada's first French Prime Minister. Next to Sir Wilfrid is my dad's parents, Alice and Edmund Nash. When we skip down to the bookshelf below, at the upper left-hand corner is a picture of my maternal grandmother, Charlotte McKinnon, later Charlotte Anderson. Next to my grandmother is more of a personal artifact. It's an Oklahoma Joe's drink smoker. I use it to smoke the occasional whiskey, and on top of that is the Finnish flag. Some people have mistaken and thought it was a Nova Scotia flag in my videos, but it's a Finnish flag just to represent my wife's family. I have a little tin of tea there from Plymouth Foundation, and the next two things are an iron and a pipe, which are representative of my grandmother and my grandfather on my mom's side. Continue along that bottom shelf, we have the book Highland Heart of Nova Scotia, which is a great book about the Scottish heritage of Nova Scotia. It was written by Neil McNeill. Behind there is another sort of personal artifact. It's a tin from some
really, really good Irish whiskey fudge. Next to that tin is my maternal grandmother's mother. This is Charlotte McKinnon, who was originally Charlotte MacInnis, and her photo is sitting on a Bible which she had sent to her son-in-law, my grandfather, in 1944 when he was serving in Europe. And right next to her is a picture of my grandfather from the 1940s when he was serving in the Canadian Forces during World War II. Now, if we scoot just down to the next row of shelves, I'm just going to briefly go over a couple things there. So on that next shelf is a picture of the same grandfather. This is taken later near the end of his life in the late 1980s. My wife and I had seen this at a friend's and then later found a copy of it many years ago. And it was just a few years ago, so after I'd owned that book for about 15 years, I came across a recording that was done for research on Cape Breton coal mining towns and the people who lived there of my great-grandmother, where she talked about her husband, my great-grandfather, owning the first radio in Donkin, Nova Scotia, and one of the things they listened to regularly, where the whole town, where people would come in and listen, was the Seth Parker radio show. Also on that shelf are a couple of really particular special things to me. There is my grandfather's paybook from World War II, along with 3 notebooks that my great-grandfather, his father-in-law, wrote in the later years of his life from the mid-1930s to the early 1950s. And also on that shelf, I have a collection of silk handkerchiefs my grandfather brought back to my grandmother from the war after helping to liberate Italy. Now, going back to the wall, right below the picture of my father's parents is a vintage Guinness beer advertising sign. Next to it is a banjo that was given to me by my uncle. It was his uncle's or my granduncle's banjo. My uncle gave me to me on the condition that I learned how to play. I did learn how to play one song. I play very badly. You don't want to hear it. Trust me. And in the final thing in the corner there is my owl. This is a taxidermy owl. I call him Reginald McFeatherbutt, and he's just a decoration. Below them on my desk you'll see a set of drumsticks. This is again another family heirloom. These are some drumsticks that were given to my mother by a world-renowned pipe and drum teacher when she learned how to play the Highland drums, which I had known until recently. And he's a member of the family, and they actually helped get me closer to my solution on my the mystery about the Lorgill Crawforders. That'll be coming out in the videos later. And beside that are a couple of things that I do sell for my website. You can look down in the store. There's I Love My Scottish Heritage mug, and I also have a family research history notebook.
So these are just some of the items I got from my grandmother's house. So I'm just going to talk about recording and preserving some of these photos and items. So I'm going to assume you have a scanner and you know how to use one. If you don't, it's really essential for recording your family history to get a scanner to help you record photos digitally and also to record records. So I have my a folder here under my documents called Genealogy. I have a lot of different things in there, but we're going to be talking about really 2 different folders. I have this one photos and this one sources. These other ones are for things I've been working on that are very specific. And I organize the photos and the sources both sort of the same way. And I'm basing it similar to how I do with family trees, how I have my structure of my folders done. So I have my parents, I have my father who was a Nash, my mother who was an Anderson. So those are my 2 main folders. I also have a not related, an unsure. Not related is there's photos that I have that are from I've gathered that aren't related to me, but I might want to have in case I'm working on any projects where I might need them. This would include photos of friends of the family, etc. Anyways, so I take my family photos and I'm just going to
drill down on my mom's, and I have it, when I have my photos scanned in there, I have subfolders. And in these subfolders, again, I break them down. So my grandfather was an Anderson, and his wife was a MacInnis. Now, his mother was a Baxter, and like I said, his wife was a MacInnis. Under the Anderson folders, I have two subfolders, Baxters and MacInnis. So if I go to the MacInnis, I have two other subfolders in there. My great grandfather, the MacInnis, his wife was a McGinnis, and his mother was a Campbell. So I have any McGinnises in there, and I have Campbells in here. And I would keep going farther and farther, but again, you're probably not going to get too many generations back as far as photos. I do the same thing with sources. In sources, you will have a lot more subfolders. I'm going to show you this photo, and I'm going to show you the importance of photos and getting them and restoring them too. This is a good example. So I have this photo. This is actually my grandmother's handwriting. I found this in her house. This says grandfather and Uncle Donald. The reason why this is really important, this helped me solve a brick wall. My grandmother's mother, her maiden name was McInnis, and her first name was Catherine, and I knew that she was from what my grandparents and relatives referred up the country. Basically in Cape Breton, it was what they meant is in Inverness County. When I went to look for records of Catherine McInnis in Inverness County, there was a lot. She did have a sister named Florence. They were both alive in my lifetime, and in fact her sister Florence was a spinster. I was her favorite great grand nephew or niece. One of my cousins was her favorite grandniece. One of my first cousins, once removed, was her favorite grandniece, but I was her favorite great grandnephew or niece. Anyways, so I knew those two facts. I knew her name was Catherine. I knew she had a sister named Florence. I wasn't positive of her father's name, and I didn't have anybody else in the family to look at. So I had a hard job trying to figure out which Catherine McInnis, out of the 10 Catherine McInnises that would have been in that age range with a sister named Florence, because that's all I knew about the family. So finding this photo told me two things. Told me grandfather, didn't give his name, but I was able to deduce that from other photos I saw. But it told me Uncle Donald. So now I knew that Catherine, my great grandmother, and Florence had a brother named Donald. So on the back of this photo, it had a date. By looking at the date and looking at the date, and here I am pointing. So on the back of the photo, it had a date that was fairly readable, but it gave me a sense of the right date. Looking at Donald here and taking an estimate of his age, I was able to go through the 1911 census, which I thought would be my great grandmother's last census, most likely with her father, because my grandmother was born in 1922. So I was able to estimate Donald's age here at the time this photo was taken in 1903, and then translate that into what his age would be in 1911, and be able to find that on this in the census. When I did that, I was able to find that family. So broke a long-standing brick wall. So it's really kind of an important picture. I want to do something with this picture. I have it here. Like I said, it's actually half of a picture. I would love to know where the rest of it is. It's missing some things. It's missing half the people. I don't have it. I looked around, could not find any broken piece. The other half the family. But it's an important picture because this is one of my probably older pictures of older relatives. So this would be my great grandfather. But I actually have this picture
of his daughter, my great-grandmother, and her grandmother. Now, I don't know which grandmother this is, but these are, on this side of the family, two of my oldest pictures of as far as the age of the people and when they were born. I wanted to do something more. I didn't want to have this, so I wanted to fix it up and make it look a little nicer. I was contacted recently by a website that specializes in doing photo restoration to see if I wanted to give them a try, so I thought this is the perfect opportunity. So I went to their website. It's imagerestorationcenter.com. Really easy to use website. If you've ever uploaded a file on any website, it's pretty much as simple as that. So you just click on your start photo restoration. It's going to ask you to sign up if you haven't signed up. And it says, are you ready to upload? I'm ready to upload them. So let's go to step 2. Get to choose which packages you want. As I already explained, I'm half Scottish, so I'm going to go for the cheaper one. I don't know what the difference is, but let's see how good the quality is on using the $34.99. Now, it's going to tell me next, upload your photo below. It tells you here there's different discounts depending on how many photos you get, which is great. And they're automatically applied to your order depending what you order. So I'm going to click to upload. Great thing here now, remember I have my files folders are all organized, so I know right where they are. So I have this Charles and Donald MacInnis, and I'm going to go open, and it's going to upload it. In this photo, the big thing is it's obviously I want to get the edges cleaned up, but as important as that writing was to me in finding out who they were and helping solve that brick wall, it does take away from the look of the photo. I would really like it if it doesn't look like there's another person there behind, so if they can fix that up. And it asked me if I'd like it colorized. So as nice as colorization would be, I chose not to colorize this photo, mostly because I really liked the sort of sepia tones of this, and it really kind of reinforces the error of the photo when it was taken. So I'm going to click no thanks. Doesn't have any rips, tears, or missing parts. It has rips on the side. Let's say yes, choose delivery. 7 days, 3 days, or 48 hours. Again, I'm Scottish. I'm cheap. It's free. 7 days. That's for me. Does it have any extensive sun damage, water damage, or fading? There's not really a lot. There's a few little kind of specks there. Nothing that I would say is as far as fading or sun damage. So no. And then I'm going to click here to continue. Does it require facial reconstruction? No. The faces seem fine, so I'm going to hit no thanks. Would you like to apply waking life technology? No. Pay for my order, so I'm going to pay for my order. All prices are in United States dollars. It's fine. So I'd fill out my billing information, and I did this a day or two ago. So they sent me back the proof. This is what it looks like. As you can see, writing's all cleaned up. The specs, these specs here, this here, all this around the edges, all cleaned up. Didn't remove the person in the background, and I actually didn't ask them specifically for that. I probably should have. So let's compare. On the left we have the original, and on the right we have the proof they sent me. So they removed the writing. Wouldn't even know that there was writing there. Again, they centered it on them, so it was really easy. But see all the edges here, that they were all broken and faded. That's all been fixed. All these specks have all been taken out. The specks on the faces, this edge here, all been cleaned up. Everything looks nice and neat. Really, really, really impressed. Really happy with it. So now all I have left to do is wait for the print to arrive so I can put it back here on my shelf with the rest of my family. In the meantime, watch this video here. It's about some of the artifacts I found at my grandmother's house that helped tell part of my grandfather's story for World War II.